ultima della vita è un qualcosa che ancora quantomeno arrovella persino appunto gli scienziati e gli studiosi anche più attenti a questi problemi. E quindi questo significa che se è un po' un mistero la vita, è persino un mistero la ragione per cui noi siamo tutti qui, per esempio questa mattina, l'esistenza dell'uomo stesso è un qualcosa di particolarmente bello e misterioso insieme. E soltanto a pensare questo, mettendo anche in relazione al fatto che poi noi siamo sulla Terra, ma la Terra è un pianeta in un universo immenso di cui la Terra stessa così è una parte infinitesimale, forse gli uomini capirebbero meglio che sarebbe più opportuno spendere la loro vita, peraltro breve, per cause più nobili, piuttosto che per guerre, per sfruttamenti degli uni contro gli altri, per uso dissennato delle risorse che sono a nostra disposizione sul nostro pianeta, che sono probabilmente anche su altri pianeti. Si vivrebbe tutti molto meglio, ecco, se ci fosse sempre l'ispirazione di un incontro come questo a orientare la nostra vita, se risuonassero sempre parole così semplici e così profonde come quelle che questa mattina abbiamo già sentito fino a questo momento. Quindi nel salutarvi, perché naturalmente le istituzioni hanno tante incombenze, purtroppo per noi, naturalmente, però vi ringrazio moltissimo per quello che state facendo, per quello che farete anche nel corso di questo incontro, di questo seminario, e vi incito appunto a tornare più spesso su questo Colle Capitolino, che in fondo è anch'esso un simbolo di storia, e anche e soprattutto oggi, in particolare oggi che Roma è una città in fondo molto ospitale e attenta ai problemi della pace e della coesistenza, a tornare appunto su questo Colle Capitolino per continuare questo lavoro che voi fate e soprattutto per continuare a mettere in relazione tante fedi diverse, tante persone diverse, tante culture diverse, perché la diversità è anche uno dei significati più profondi della vita. La diversità non è un disvalore, la diversità è un valore soprattutto perché significa ricchezza, significa molteplicità, significa articolazione. Ma tutto questo ha un senso se le diversità coesistono e dialogano tra di loro, piuttosto che appunto tendere ad annullarsi le une con le altre. Ecco, grazie ancora per tutto questo e buon lavoro a tutti.
Adesso leggo il messaggio del Presidente della Repubblica Italiana, Carlo Azeglio Ciampi. Il secondo congresso mondiale, Life and its Origin, Exploration from Science and Various Spiritual and Religious Traditions, rappresenta un'occasione per rafforzare l'impegno verso i valori della solidarietà e del rispetto dei diritti umani. Il confronto e il dialogo devono essere gli strumenti per realizzare un nuovo umanesimo fondato sulla pace e sull'integrazione fra le diverse identità dei popoli. Con questi sentimenti il Presidente della Repubblica esprime vivo apprezzamento al Bhaktivedanta Institute e invia agli illustri relatori, agli organizzatori dell'evento e a tutti i partecipanti un saluto cordiale, cui unisco il mio personale, Gaetano Gifuni, Segretario Generale Presidenza della Repubblica.
We are very pleased to have Dr. Vittorio Marchi, quantum physicist, as our chairperson for this inaugural session. Dr. Marchi, will you please welcome our representative?
Buongiorno e naturalmente un cordiale saluto a tutti, un saluto all'assessore alla cultura Gianni Borgna, un cordiale saluto al sindaco di Roma Walter Veltroni e Naturalmente credo di interpretare i sentimenti di tutti i presenti nel rivolgere e nel rispondere al messaggio del Presidente della Repubblica Carlo Azeglio Ciampi, rivolgendogli un ringraziamento e un cordiale saluto non retorico, va bene, di amicizia e di affetto. Sono il professor Vittorio Marchi, fisico e ricercatore, e ho avuto la fortuna, ma la fortuna, sapete, è come il caso. Einstein diceva che il caso non esiste, se vogliamo è Dio che passeggia in incognito. Qualcun altro ha detto che il caso è il rifugio degli ignoranti. La vita, insomma, ha voluto che io incontrassi il più grande amico e collaboratore di Enrico Fermi e che lavorassi con lui. E questo incontro mi ha cambiato la vita, mi ha dato una visione del mondo, inteso nel senso più vasto dell'universo, che prima non avevo. E mi ha lasciato un incarico, un compito, se volete, pesantissimo, ma nello stesso tempo dolcissimo, di estendere a tutti i miei simili la concezione e il concetto che tutto è uno. Tutto è uno. Tutto è interconnesso. Tutti apparteniamo a questa fonte unica che ci fa tutti, quindi, consanguini e fratelli. Questo è la chiave di tutto, anche scientificamente, e questo è il lavoro che io porto avanti da 40-50 anni e che intendo portarlo fino alla fine di questa mia esperienza qui sulla Terra, per estendere ai miei simili questo concetto, perché finché l'umanità, tutti noi, non toccheremo proprio con mano, non ci renderemo conto di essere tutti interconnessi, tutti collegati l'uno con l'altro, questa pace che tutti invochiamo, questo amore universale che tutti invochiamo, non potrà essere possibile. Quando finalmente perderemo la visione dell'altro, che non esiste, ma entreremo nella visione dell'assoluto, assoluto, che vuol dire sciolto dalla visione del relativo, allora finalmente vedremo scendere questa pace sulla terra. Le marce sono importanti per la pace, va bene, i messaggi sono importanti, ma bisogna entrare in questa visione della realtà che ci porta oltre la terra, anche alle dimensioni, alle realtà invisibili. Detto questo, volevo accennare al fatto che io ho partecipato al congresso di Assisi e Assisi è il centro mondiale della pace. Sono stato invitato e ho questo incarico quindi di creare questa saldatura, questo incontro fra l'Oriente e l'Occidente, perché siamo tutti uno. Come nel cervello esiste un lobo sinistro, un lobo destro, un emisfero sinistro, un a destro, e il tutto forma tutto un organismo, così avviene sulla Terra. Anche la Terra ha i suoi due emisferi, va bene, e il tutto forma un organismo unico. Devo lanciare questo messaggio: non si può nuocere a nessuna parte, non solo della Terra, ma dell'universo e del cosmo, senza danneggiare noi stessi. Svilupperò in altra sede questo tema, per ora voglio accennare al fatto che io e il dottor Singh ci siamo incontrati ad Assisi e il dottor Singh mi ha dato un ruolo che io ritengo sproporzionato alla mia modestissima persona e che comunque devo assolvere. Volevo presentarvi il dottor Singh perché è l'autentico protagonista e organizzatore di questo convegno. Leggo perché temo di perdere qualcosa e traduco per presentare il dottor Singh. Va bene, ho il piacere di introdurre il direttore del Bhaktivedanta Institute e l'organizzatore di questa importante conferenza. Il dottor Singh viene dall'India ed è uno scienziato, uno spiritualista e un attivo partecipante allo sviluppo del dialogo tra la scienza, la spiritualità e la religione. Egli è anche un attivissimo protagonista del dialogo interreligioso per la pace del mondo. Egli ha organizzato diversi congressi internazionali intorno al mondo, in tutto il mondo. Il dottor Singh ha il dottorato in fisica, in chimica organica, dalla chimica organica, proviene dalla Università della California, negli Stati Uniti, è stato molto gentile a organizzare questo importante congresso qui a Roma, va bene, che è la capitale storica, e io aggiungerei anche eterna, di tutto il mondo. Grazie per avermi ascoltato.
I'll open with a short prayer. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namo Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avasisate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Respected spiritual leaders, honorable dignitaries, distinguished delegates, speakers, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to the Bhaktivedanta Institute's 3-day International Congress on Life and its Origin, Exploration from Science and Religious Spiritual Traditions here in Rome, the very meaningful and historic city. Rome is a very historic city, and it has played a major role in the Western world for well over 2,000 years. Rome is important because the Vatican City is the headquarters of the Roman Catholic world, and the Pope resides here. The Honorable Mayor of Rome, Mr. Walter Beltroni, has kindly arranged for this hall to be used for this Congress without any charge. This shows the living interest that Rome has in both fields of science and spirituality. We are extremely grateful to him for his kind support and for giving us this facility. On behalf of the organizing committee, I'd like to express our sincere thanks to the Honorable President of the Italian Republic, His Excellency Carlo Azeglio Ciampi, for his conveying to us his personal best wishes for the success of this Congress, and also for sending his best well-wishing words. We also acknowledge the kind patronage of the Municipality of Rome, of the President of the Regional Council of Lazio, and of the Aldermanship to the Cultural Politics of the Municipality of Rome. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization and UNESCO have also sent us messages conveying their best wishes for the success of this Congress. The organizers are all grateful to all of them for their kind support. The Bhaktivedanta Institute feels very much encouraged by all these positive signs of support from these leaders. This seems to be an indication, a confirmation that currently there is a paradigm shift in progress in the global mindset. This makes now the perfect time for this type of a Congress to be held. For too long, it seems that science and the religion, or science and the spirituality per se, have been in opposition, like enemies. However, the ultimate goal of both is the search for the truth for the welfare of humanity. Therefore, they should join hands for the benefit of the world. Recent high-tech terrorism seems to have shocked the entire world by the gross misuse of science and the religion combined. Would have ever thought of using a high-tech passenger jet liner full of civilians as a guided missile? People all over the world today live in fear and anxiety from terrorism. A major cause for many avoidable activities could be due to a lack of the deeper knowledge and understanding of life. Most of us will agree that knowledge of life is the most important. Many of us dream for a better world with lasting peace and happiness, and many congresses have been held in an attempt to understand life. However, most scientific congresses that have touched upon life in its origin have strictly focused on the material aspect only. However, every serious scientist and a thoughtful scholar will agree with the fact that the scientific discussion based primarily on atoms and molecules in regard to life's origin is extremely limited. Nobel Laureate, the Hungarian Nobel Laureate and the biochemist Csikszentmihalyi remarked, quote, "In my search for the secret of life, I ended up with atoms and electrons, which have no life at all. Somewhere along the line, life has run out through my fingers," unquote. There is enough evidence that life as such is not made up of only molecules, but there are deeper aspects which we can describe in general as being spiritual aspects of life. Everyone will agree that life as we know it is made up of, number one, the physical body, and number two, the mind, and number three, the conscious entity which animates the first two and experiences the world around him through this mind and the five senses of the body. This conscious being or self is characterized by having undeniable spiritual qualities and the properties such as free will, experience of pleasure and the pain, joy and suffering, possesses consciousness or the ability to experience knowledge and to respond to it, and the various emotional and aesthetic feelings. All these properties are really an integral part of life, but they are beyond the scope of materialistic science of mere atoms and molecules. A special feature of this Congress is that we will see science and spirituality going hand in hand in the search for the understanding of life and its different aspects, including its origin from both the rigorous scientific and the spiritual domains of reality. As we move on in the 21st century, the time has definitely come to re-examine more thoroughly about the science of life, its purpose, and its origin. In this regard, the ancient religious and spiritual scriptures of the world have contributed to this point that everything in this material world, including life, is a product of divine creation. In other words, God is the source of everything, aham sarvasya prabhava, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita. This Congress is primarily aimed at introducing a serious discussion about the role of God in the scientific research of life, its nature and its origin. Many scholars today express that we need a new science or new paradigm to understand the deeper meaning of reality. In this connection, I would like to suggest that spirituality will be a major partner of this new science or of this new paradigm. This new science should be a holistic approach in the search of life. It should be objective and balanced. A one-sided approach will not be able to answer many questions in this vital field of knowledge. Both science and spirituality must be complementary to one another. Many prominent thinkers in science, as well as the religious leaders from around the world, have gathered here for a very productive discussion in regard to life's origin. This Congress is probably the first or one of the first ever as humble attempt to begin a new chapter in history of the evolution of modern science. It seems that of late, the intelligentsia of the world have become more willing to openly discuss spirituality. This is greatly a welcome development. Back when I was doing my PhD in the United States, in the early 70s, generally most scientists would mock at and dismiss any religious idea as it was considered somewhat unfashionable for a scientist to entertain such thoughts. It seems that science has reached too many dead ends in the search for life's origin, and now they are ready to consider that there may be another nature operating behind the scenes, behind the backdrop of what we can see. The deliberations of the distinguished scholars over the next 3 days will be extremely useful in this millennium for the search of the ultimate knowledge of life. Now, I'd like to show the overhead very briefly. The overview. The overview of the Congress, very briefly, I just like outline. In conjunction with this Congress, we actually had a program yesterday at the prestigious Pontifical Angelicum University's Gian Paolo II Auditorium. The theme of the program was the meaning and the purpose of life, spiritual and scientific perspectives. Those of you who were present yesterday would have enjoyed the lively session there. Now, over the next 3 days of this Congress, we'll hear our learned speakers in 11 academic sessions. Each session has been given a theme which relates to different aspects of life and its origin. I would like to briefly introduce some of these concepts that we have been thinking about so that that will give you at least some idea what we have in our mind. So in the inaugural session, we are very fortunate to distinguished speakers, keynote speakers, Professor B.V. Raman, very well-known quantum physicist. He worked under the famous de Broglie in physics, and will speak primarily focusing on the scientific aspects of life, as well as touching some aspects of spirituality. And we also have the next speaker, Professor Royce Crolius. He's well known for his theological aspects, understanding of world religions. He will speak from the world religious viewpoint. In session 2, we have the title session is called Spiritual Perspectives on Life and Its Origin. Now, in this session, I can say that in the last few centuries, a paradigm shift has taken place in the global worldview, especially regarding the nature of life and its origin. It has drastically changed from a spiritually based one to a completely materially based one, primarily because of the influence of science and technology in our urbanized lives. However, this change of mindset has produced a tremendous impact on the values and the sense of human responsibility in conduct. Every thinking person feels a great need to bring back the proper understanding of life, which is a balance between spirituality and material science. There is therefore a great need of exploring the spiritual dimensions of life urgently. In session 3, we'll discuss about the cosmology and cosmogony of life, these contemporary issues. Here, we'll discuss the human mind is extremely inquisitive. All traditions since the beginning of civilization agree that inquiry about the philosophy, meaning, purpose, and origin of life constitute the most important part of knowledge, or the foundation upon which all other knowledge stands. Our distinguished speakers in this third session will explore the current scientific and the spiritual concepts of the universe, including life and its origin. In session 4, we have, the title is called Paradigms versus Values of Life. So just a short word from Kuhn. Kuhn described that a paradigm as a collection of beliefs shared by scientists. These beliefs include a set of assumptions, agreements, models, mathematics, terminologies, and theories about how problems are to be defined, understood, and resolved. When Einstein said, "We cannot solve today problems with the same thinking that gave us those problems." So various cultural and spiritual traditions and worldviews have different paradigms with their corresponding values and meanings. The speakers in this fourth session will enlighten us on those different traditions from which we distill the essence of these values for us to consider and evaluate and utilize. In the fifth session, the session is titled The Science of God. So we can ask, does God exist? Obviously, this is a billion-dollar question. Since the dawn of civilization, the concept of the personality of God, Godhead, has played a very significant role in shaping our worldviews on the meaning and the purpose of life. However, ever since modern scientific culture began dominating the world stage over the past 400 years, it has tremendously decreased the paradigm of a God-centered civilization. As a consequence of this, in this present age of science and technology we see in the world, there are many unwanted symptoms in the behavior which bring negative influences that affect everyone's life. We have to recognize that scientific knowledge is extremely limited, so we would not discard religious wisdom. So we should not discard religious wisdom and spiritual technology because they are even more important in shaping the character, conduct of a man than the purely materialistic aspects of education. We eagerly expect that the speakers in this session to enlighten us about the areas where human knowledge will be able to appreciate and approach transcendental knowledge, knowledge of energies that operate beyond the jurisdiction of the observable laws of nature. In session 6, we'll discuss about a theistic interpretation of empirical observations on life in its origin. In science, that empirical observations constitute the very foundation of modern science. The scientific process entails hypothesis, experimentation, observation, collecting data, and obtaining the result. This result then has to be interpreted to derive utility from it. Modern science has fallen into the trap of selectively accepting only those findings which fit into their preconceived material paradigms or material hypotheses. When these results are to be interpreted, they try to manipulate them to fit the results into these paradigms. Evidence that doesn't fit or contradicts is blindly rejected. Countless examples of this have been exposed in the highly thought-provoking book. This is a forbidden archaeology by one of the well-known authors, who is also here, will be one of the speakers. So this book has opened many of these ideas in this area. So in other words, the modern science tries to be almost exclusively mechanistic. However, these mechanistic models are thus entirely dependent on our limited powers of sense perceptions. However, every honest and thoughtful person will agree that the electron, just like God, has never been seen. However, although the electron cannot be seen, its nature and existence can be understood by its symptoms. the symptoms can be inferred from the electron's influence in the interactions with observable energies. In the same way, the spiritual soul or the spiriton, we can say, cannot be seen, but its symptom consciousness can be perceived. Similarly, God can also can be experienced if we look for the symptoms of his existence. For example, beauty, truthfulness, intricate and mathematically perfect laws of nature, mysteries and mysticism, etc. Some of these are quantifiable, such as the mathematical laws, while others, like beauty, cannot be quantified or explained by rigorous scientific process. But we all know that both of these groups do exist as a part of reality. Therefore, the conclusion is that reality exists beyond the boundaries of empirical observation. In session 7, we have a session that's called God and the New Biology. I use the term this new biology in the sense that something which is not very strongly practiced. So when you bring this spiritual conception about life, so in the modern science, so that will be what I call, it is not exactly new, but at least our paradigm shift will take place, so therefore it's called new biology. Here we find a prominent example how a faulty and grossly inadequate hypothesis by researchers in general has become blindly or unquestioningly accepted almost as an axiomatic truth. Research is done only in a direction that may fulfill the pre-existing paradigm, as I've already mentioned earlier. So this will be discussed very extensively in this session. In session number 8, that is called Scientific Exploration for the Existence of God. This is on Saturday night. These programs are held in a place called Resto Theater, which is about 6-7 minutes walk from here. And so in this session, we'll explore about the different aspects of the scientific conceptions about the existence of God. So in this way, these sessions are in such a way that everyone can can participate in such a way that they can contribute their thoughts and ideas, so that from there we can generate some possibilities in the future for some research work. So in this way, we have in the last session, we have further research in the future in this area. When we all understand life, then a lasting, let's say, desire or lasting achievement of world peace, a lasting world peace, that such things will be possible. But otherwise, we have so many summits, like international peace summits, that the religious or the political or these things are, although we like to have world peace, but at the same time, unless we know the foundation about what is the meaning of life and how life exists. So these are very, if we are not convinced about the existence of life, that it would not be so easy to bring having a world peace. So we hope that this study of life from both scientific and religious perspectives, I think, can be applied in all aspects of our existence, in political circles, in social circles, and in all our human activities. So when we come to that platform, then there is a possibility that there will be lasting world peace, and then we can all live happily and in friendship with the universal brotherhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. T.D. Singh. Just briefly, we have a message from the Honorable Daniela Monteforte, the assessor of the province of Rome. She would like to send her warm welcome to all the participants of the Congress. She hopes that peace and human rights will develop all over the world. We would now like to invite our keynote speaker, Vivi Roman.
Considero un onore essere in questa conferenza, in questa prestigiosa università, in questa antica e bellissima città. Mi sarebbe piaciuto presentare il mio discorso in italiano, ma non ne in grado. Almeno devo salutarvi in italiano. Buongiorno, mille grazie. Questions related to the origins are among the most intriguing ones that tease and taunt the human mind. How did the universe come to be? How did we humans come to be? How did our languages emerge? These are not only interesting questions in themselves, but are fundamental and inescapable when one reflects on the nature of things and of existence. If we close our eyes for a moment and reflect how all this world that we experience became so real for our conscious self and remains so only for a brief span of time, which is a mere wink in the eternity that lies before and behind this passing moment, we begin to realize that there is something unimaginably mysterious about it all. No wonder the human mind has been grappling with these since the most ancient times. One might say, as the poet Wordsworth did, here we are in a bright and breathing world, our origin, what matters it? But it is equally true, as Ernest Renan wrote, that on garde toujours la marque de ses origines. We always have traces of our origins. Traditional creation stories may be considered from different perspectives. They may be regarded as profound revelations of how it all came to be, revelations to the prophets and sage poets of different religions. Or again, they may be taken as symbolic of more profound truths presented in ways that are easily understood. Or they could be taken as ancient attempts by the human mind to account for the puzzling and fascinating questions confronting us. Different people have approached the matter differently. My task today is to reflect a little on what science has been saying on the question of origins and how we may relate it to religious perspectives. First, we should note that there is no unanimity on the question of origins even in the world of science. There are certainly overlaps here and there, and there is consensus on matters of methodology, but as to the details of the explanations, there are a few competing theories. As far as we know, the kind of life we are familiar with exists only on our planet. As far as scientific extrapolations go, we can speak of life of any form only in our physical universe. Science tells us nothing about extra cosmic space and time. Indeed, the phrase is oxymoronic. What this means is related to the questions of biogenesis is that of cosmogenesis. One cannot theorize or speculate on the origin of life without a framework for the origin of the physical universe. In this context, there are some fundamental differences between the scientific and the religious perspectives. As to scientific theories of cosmogenesis, an interesting fact is that whereas religious answers to fundamental questions vary from place to place, scientific answers tend to vary from time to time. Few scientific cosmogenetic theories, answers, have enjoyed acceptance in the scientific world for more than a century. New theories on cosmogenesis come and go on the basis of newly acquired data and new insights of investigators. Most of the founders of modern science were deeply religious men who believed in a divine being. Thus arose a new vision of God as an omnipotent creator of the universe and its laws, who left its vast machine ticking away like a well-constructed clock, smoothly, precisely, and interminably. Thus Robert Boyle wrote, "The excellent contrivance of the great system of the world, and especially the curious fabric of the bodies of animals, have made the great motives that in all ages and nations induced philosophy